gentlemen. Welcome to the United States Army Europe and Africa and the United States Army Garrison Wiesbaden Veterans Day Observance Ceremony. Please stand for the posting of the colors, the playing of the national anthems of the Federal Republic of Germany and the United States of America, and the invocation. As a reminder, salutes will be rendered during the national anthems.
I invite you to pray with me. Almighty God, as we have come together to honor the many women and men who have put on the uniform to protect our freedom, I thank you that they answered the call to protect liberty, stood strong in the midst of adversity, and were even willing to lay down their lives to ensure ours. During this ceremony, we also remember the end of the First World War and the service and sacrifice of many women and men who have answered their nation's call. As freedom does not come without cost, we ask on this Armistice Day for your blessing on those families who have experienced the loss of a loved one in service, and for healing for those who continue to carry the loss or wounds of war. May this ceremony now honor you and give us and our allies and friends renewed strength to always act courageously, to stand fearing no evil, to protect liberty, and to be found faithful as we walk in the footprints of those who have gone before us. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Officiating at today's ceremony is the Deputy Commanding General, United States Army, Europe and Africa, Lieutenant General Andrew M. Rohling. Joining us today are members of Veterans Foreign Wars Post 27 and Post Legion Wiesbaden JROTC. Music is provided by the United States Army and Europe Africa Brass Quintet. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Rohling.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, thank you for being here today as we observe Veterans Day and spend just a few special moments to recognize all who have served and continue to serve our nation with honor and distinction. For those of us here in Europe, what we call Veterans Day, and most Europeans recognize as Armistice Day, is especially important on both sides of the Atlantic. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, all was quiet on the Western Front after more than 4 years of the Great War. The war to end all wars, a war that still impacts our countries and allies 114 years later. For Americans, in 1938, Congress made Armistice Day an official annual national holiday. And in 1954, after the Second World War and Korean War, the name was changed to Veterans Day. So today we honor the millions of men and women who have served our great country in war and in peace since its founding some 246 years ago. But on a day originally devised to honor the military service and sacrifice of an older, terrible war, it's impossible not to ignore the tragedy that the European continent finds itself in again as it's in the grip of another. If only this conflict would end by 11 o'clock tomorrow. For almost all of us here, there have always been veterans in our lives. Our parents, our aunts, our uncles, our brothers, our sisters, our children, many who were part of wars and conflict, fighting for our nation's freedom and the freedom of others. And the freedom of other sovereign nations, and many who served to protect the peace in between. More and more of our veterans volunteered to serve since the United States ended its draft in 1973. So about any veteran you meet under the age of 70 served of his or her own free will, knowing the risks and knowing the sacrifices. You, answered our nation's call to support and defend our Constitution. This year, we offer a special thanks to those veterans who served in the Vietnam conflict as we continue to commemorate the 50th anniversary of that war. From 1955 to 1975, over 9 million Americans served in Vietnam. They were the oldest and best educated force America ever sent into harm's way. And they represented 10% of their generation. Today, nearly 6 million Vietnam veterans are still living. Unlike previous wars, TV brought this war into the home and into the living rooms of our citizens. That coverage over time influenced the way people view the war and those who served, most of who were drafted. The war became unpopular, and those who served often unwelcome upon returning home. An experience many of us today, thankfully, did not have. For those who served in Vietnam, thank you from our nation and from me for your service and your sacrifice. Right now, all over our country and the globe, veterans serve not only in the military, but outside as teachers, doctors, engineers, social workers, community leaders, first responders, and elected officials. They continue to serve our communities by making positive contributions, building a stronger future, and inspiring future generations. In the United States, we have about 18 million veterans who have served, about 7% of our population. As a nation, I hope we ensure the service and sacrifice of our veterans is never again overlooked or forgotten. So regardless of the military branch in which our veterans have served, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, and now the Space Force, this day belongs to them all. Today we say thank you to all our veterans, past, present, and future, especially those here in Europe. That gratitude extends to the veterans of our allies and our partners. Generations of patriots who have dedicated themselves to the defense of our countries, making us all stronger together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the laying of the wreath and the playing of taps. Lieutenant General Rohling will be joined by American Legion Post Commander Todd Johnson and Veterans of Foreign Wars Post Quartermaster David Kane. The laying of this wreath is a symbol of our appreciation for the countless soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and Guardians who have served for the sake of freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Deputy Commanding General, United States Army Europe and Africa, United States Army Garrison Wiesbaden, thank you for attending today's ceremony. We express our sincere appreciation to the United States Army Europe and Africa Band, the flag detail provided by Weisbaden High School Junior ROTC, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 27 for providing the wreath. This concludes today's ceremony. Thank you very much.